I'd like to call to order the regular August 15th, 2017 Planning Commission. Bobby, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Knudsen?
Present.
Commissioner Monette?
Here.
Commissioner Pont?
Here.
Vice Chair Hardy is absent.
That's correct.
Chair Kistner?
Here. Next item is public forum. This is an opportunity for the public to address the Commission on items of interest to the public that are not listed on this agenda. Because of restrictions imposed by the Brown Act, the Commission may not engage in discussion nor take action on matters not described in the agenda. Please observe the time limit of 3 minutes. Do we have any public comment? Close public comment. Consent items. The only item on the members of the Commission or the public may ask that any items be considered individually for purpose of considering alternative action for extended discussion or for public comment. Unless that is done, one motion may be used to adopt all recommended actions. The only thing that we have on here is the approval of the August 1st, 2017 minutes.
Move adoption of the consent agenda?
No one wanted to pull it. No. Second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Pont?
Yes.
Commissioner Monette?
Yes.
Commissioner Knudsen?
Yes.
Chair Kistner?
Yes. Public hearings. We have a design review application PL 17-013 to construct the Las Alcobas Pedestrian Bridge over the York Creek between 1915 Main Street and 2000 Main Street in the Service Commercial and Winery Zone District, respectively. May I have a staff report, please?
Before we have the staff report, I need to say that I spoke with a member of the public about this, not the applicant, and we discussed different ideas about his ideas, and I assured him that even though I had heard his ideas, that my mind was still open and I needed to hear the public comment before I made up my mind.
Thank you. Good evening, Commissioners. The Las Alcobas, or York Creek Pedestrian Bridge Design Review, includes a request to construct a 10 by 65 foot pedestrian bridge extending from Las Alcobas at 1915 Main Street to Behringer Winery at 2000 Main Street. The bridge would be a prefab steel truss bridge painted high gloss black with stainless steel cable railing with a maximum 4-inch spacing, live oak panels, and a live wood deck. It would be supported by abutment mat foundations, approximately 12 feet long by 5.5 feet wide, constructed on spread footings that would be cast approximately 3 to 5 feet below original ground level. Access to the bridge will be provided by a series of stairs on the Las Alcobas property at the rear of the building abutting York Creek, as well as by an existing elevator. Per condition of approval, a marked crosswalk will be placed in the existing paved area of the Behringer Winery parking lot to allow pedestrians to safely cross from the bridge to the Behringer Winery, and recycle and trash bins will also be required on either side of the bridge to preclude trash from entering the waterway. As shown on this slide, the subject property spans two properties, the subject project spans two properties, 1915 Main and 2000 Main, albeit most of it is within the boundaries of the Las Alcobas property. To facilitate coordination across property lines, a reciprocal easement between the respective property owners would be executed prior to building permit issuance. The agreement would establish covenants and restrictions and easements respecting the design, construction, maintenance, operations, and use of the bridge. Amongst other things, the draft agreement stipulates that the Las Alcobas property owner maintain the bridge in good condition and appearance and in accordance with all applicable laws. A maintenance trust fund would be established directly following execution of the agreement, with the exclusive purpose to be used to maintain or, if needed in the future, to remove the bridge. All of the easements and restrictions, et cetera, set forth in the agreement would run with the land in perpetuity. This slide provides some context and shows the existing conditions up and downstream of the proposed bridge and at either bank facing Behringer and facing Las Alcobas. To protect the existing creek habitat in affected areas, a streambed alteration agreement is required by the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. A draft agreement has already been prepared, as has a restoration plan, which is required as part of the agreement. The restoration activities required under the streambed alteration agreement and restoration plan will be located adjacent to the bridge crossing and within existing riparian habitat along the top of the bank. As detailed in project documents, the removal of approximately 144 square feet of willow riparian habitat would be mitigated with about 430 square feet of riparian habitat, which equates to a 3-to-1 mitigation ratio. There are also a total of 8 trees that will be removed, 2 of which are native willows. The rest are either non-native or they're dead trees. And the removal of the 2 native willows will be mitigated with the reintroduction of a total of 8 native trees, which is a 4-to-1 compensation for natives. The final planting plan will be submitted to California Department of Fish and Wildlife and used to monitor success for a minimum of a 3-year period, and that would also require an 80% success rate. Under the service commercial, which governs the service commercial zoning, which governs 1915 Main, and the winery zoning, which governs 2000 Main, structures which are customarily incidental and clearly subordinate to permitted uses are allowed. The proposed bridge would serve as a pedestrian amenity to facilitate safe and convenient circulation between the 2 properties. Pedestrian circulation improvements are customarily found in connection with commercial land uses, and in the case of the pedestrian bridge, it would be both incidental or reasonably related and subordinate, i.e. proportionately smaller, to the respective land uses on site, which are a hotel and a winery. The bridge would not cause the property to conflict with any applicable provision of the zoning code. Similarly, the small scale of the bridge, appropriate siting, and associated restoration activities required as part of the streambed alteration agreement and as CEQA mitigation ensure that it is consistent with applicable general plan policies. As such, the project is found to be consistent with all applicable zoning standards and the goals and overall intent of the general plan. In respect to design review, it was also found to meet design review findings in that the employment of stainless steel materials as well as naturally sourced materials like the live oak detailing would be compatible with the character of the subject site. The unobtrusive placement of the bridge behind the building and setback from Highway 29, small scale and appropriate use of materials would ensure that the project meets the required findings. Further, the restoration of the immediate area surrounding the bridge would further enhance the creek setting in addition to restoring valued habitat. In accordance with Article 6 and Appendix G of the California Environmental Quality Act, an initial study and mitigated negative declaration was prepared for the project. The document contains a description of the project, analysis of potential environmental impacts, as well as mitigation measures intended to reduce potentially significant impacts to less than significant levels. Potentially significant impacts were identified in respect to air quality, biological resources, cultural resources, and hydrological resources, but all were found to be mitigated to less than significant levels, and no potentially significant impacts are expected. The draft ISM&D was circulated for a 31-day public review period from June 19th, 2017 to July 19th. One comment was received during the CEQA public review period from the California Department of Fish and Wildlife and related to the anticipated listing of a new species that they wanted to have addressed in the ISMND. That comment was responded to and addressed in a formal written response, which was attached to your staff report. Since the close of the public review period, 2 more comments were received, one from Caltrans and one from the Living Rivers Council. The Caltrans letter noted considerations related to cultural and biological resources. However, those concerns are addressed adequately through the ISMND and through the draft streambed and alteration agreement. The Living River Council also submitted a letter after the close of the public comment period, which stated that the environmental document overlooked the fact that York Creek provides habitat to freshwater shrimp and red-legged frog, which are identified by Fish and Wildlife as threatened species. Subsequently, a response letter was provided by the project biologist that rebuts the assertions outlined in the letter and elaborates on the reasons why this stretch of York Creek is not, in fact, considered suitable habitat for freshwater shrimp or the red-legged frog, and why the conclusions reached are indeed appropriate. A habitat assessment was prepared by Wildlife Research Associates and Jane Valerius Environmental Consulting in September of 2016, and that was appended to the ISMND. As part of the habitat assessment, a site visit was conducted in September to evaluate the potential occurrence of 38 special status wildlife species known to be present or possibly present in the region, and also the California Natural Diversity Database, I think that's what it is, was referenced to see whether or not there was known occurrences within the project vicinity. As shown in Appendix C of the habitat assessment and detailed in the consultant's rebuttal letter, no suitable habitat for California freshwater shrimp or the red-legged frog was identified. Further, under the streambed alteration agreement, there are provisions in there that would help protect the species, irregardless of if they'd been previously identified. For example, there's a provision in there that requires that the project area be surveyed by a qualified biologist for the presence of special status species within 48 hours prior to construction. It also requires that work be suspended and the California Department of Fish and Wildlife be notified if special status species or listed species are encountered during project construction. So with the original evaluation that was done and those provisions that are included in the streambed alteration agreement, there are no new potentially significant impacts identified. And with that, the Planning and Community Development Department finds that the proposed pedestrian bridge would not have significant impacts to the environment, and further finds that the proposed pedestrian bridge is in keeping with the character of the site and appropriate for the setting. And for those reasons, staff concludes that design review findings can be made and recommends that the City of St. Helena Planning Commission adopt a resolution to approve the initial study and mitigated negative declaration.
Oops, your mic went away.
How about, is it on now? Okay. Now?
No. Try the one next to you.
I'm going to try Erica's. Oh, that's a good idea.
That one you
Okay,
can
I'll use this one for now. And we recommend you adopt a resolution to approve the initial study and mitigated negative declaration and the mitigation monitoring and reporting program, and accept the required findings and approve design review for the Las Alcobas Pedestrian Bridge. Okay. Oops.
If you've got questions of staff, I prefer you ask them now.
I do have one clarifying question. Is the bridge going to have lighting or not?
I don't believe that there is lighting proposed.
But is there lighting planned?
I take those as being the same thing, but I can ask the applicant to confirm.
Okay.
Can they?
So it will be closed at night?
Right. Or dark at night.
So I'm Jason Hickey with Mark Thomas and Company, the bridge engineer for the project. There is currently no lighting planned on the bridge itself. It's relatively short at 65 feet. There is ambient lighting both in the parking lot at Behringer Winery, which is very near the end of the bridge, and then there's also lighting available on the Las Alcobas hotel site on the opposite end of the bridge. So one could traverse it at night safely, but there's no real safety concerns for.
If I could ask a follow-up question?
Sure.
Does the ambient light meet the ADA standards? Because the bridge will be open to the general users. If you don't meet the light standards for ADA applicable people, you may have problems.
You also said the light was available on the Las Alcobas side. Is it there now?
Yes, there's lighting installed on the outside of the hotel building near the abutment.
So there would be no new lighting to illuminate the bridge?
Gurit Bajwa, project applicant. The bridge is designed to be closed at night as soon as after hours, and I think Behringer closes after 5:30.
Unless there's an event.
Unless there's an event, and obviously there will
They
be.
have lots of events.
But if we will obviously subscribe to ADA minimum requirements for lighting. But the whole idea is that the bridge will be closed from both sides after hours from Behringer side and from Las Alcobas side. So it's only being used during normal business hours for both.
So it will be closed at 5 even when there are events?
No, obviously if there's a unique event, then it'll be open.
Okay, because but there are gates on
There will be gates on both sides, yeah.
And okay, but those nighttime events, then when you say you'll bring it up to ADA, does that mean you'll install some so that it lights up the top of the bridge so people can see their feet on the bridge? Or?
Absolutely.
But again,
ADA compliance will be verified through the building permit review process.
I wanted to clarify the use of the bridges during obviously normal hours and security on both sides.
Well, it's important to my concerns as to whether that ADA lighting is on the bridge itself or simply coming from the lights that are already there. And if there are new lights, that's something that I would want to know in terms of birds and nocturnal animals and insects and all the creatures who might be affected by any lighting.
Yeah, terrific point. We will work with staff to make sure that it meets all lighting standards. All lighting standards, whether it's new lighting or ambient lighting. We'll work with staff, I mean, if that's the appropriate thing.
Well, thank you for your answer, yeah.
Well, I don't have a question, but I do have a couple of concerns.
I think we'll do that in our discussion time.
Okay, we can do it there.
The only Lily did a great job summarizing a lot of the details of the project, but the primary purpose of the bridge and the siting of it is to provide convenient and safe access for for guests of the hotel to access the Behringer Winery, which is an obvious attraction in the area. Along Main Street, there's a relatively narrow sidewalk that would provides the only existing access, and it's on the outside of a corner in the highway, which gets quite a bit of traffic. So having walked it, it's not the most comforting feeling to walk through that. So this provides alternate access that would be much safer for the pedestrians that are going to use it. And the only other thing I want to add is the bridge abutments were set basically back from the top of bank to minimize any environmental impacts and concerns with regard to that.
Yeah.
Is there any questions to the applicant?
I had another question for staff,
Wait a minute,
if I may.
Bobby.
Yeah.
David?
I have a question for the applicant. In terms of the
I'll do it too.
the foundations and lifting the bridge into place, it seems like you've done a careful job of sort of figuring out ways to minimize the impact on the environment and then mitigating that impact. What about mitigating the actual construction process itself? Because oftentimes when you're laying footers or whatever, you're moving heavy equipment around, other things tend to get damaged.
Yeah, so the actual bridge construction itself, the bridge is constructed off-site at a fabrication plant and trucked to the site. So there will be a very brief time that flaggers will be used to essentially back the bridge into the Behringer parking lot. The construction of the abutments happens with relatively small equipment, basically a backhoe, a couple of guys, and then when they do concrete pours, a cement truck. The actual footings are really quite small, especially in comparison to the construction that has already occurred at the hotel site. So the abutment construction would happen on either side. The bridge would be basically brought in within a matter of several minutes. It would be able to be backed into the parking lot, where it would be then lifted by a small crane onto the abutments. That whole process takes maybe an hour, and then the kind of the finishing touches would then be put on the bridge, the timber decking, the live oak rails on either side that were harvested from a bridge that had to be fallen, or a tree that had to be fallen on site. So one of the old trees there that had to be that was dying and had to be removed was milled and will provide kind of the aesthetic centerpiece for either side of the bridge. So it really will look quite nice. So.
I was wondering, you weren't supposed to be within a quarter mile of a school, but the CIA does that count as a school? That's a school, and I don't even know what difference it would make. I don't know what kind of mitigation you would have to do if it were within a quarter of a mile of a school, but I don't know if I should ask you, but that's an issue here, and it rules out Robert Louis Stevenson, but it didn't mention CIA, so.
And can you just say what specific section?
Yes.
I think there's more to that.
It's, let's see, page 39, 5.8C.
That's identified as having no impact.
Yeah. Because it's just really a question. I have no
Because
idea.
it states the pedestrian bridge will not emit hazardous emissions or handle hazardous or acutely hazardous materials, substances, or waste during operations. Therefore, the project will have no impacts due to release or handling of hazardous materials proximate to schools.
Exactly, but it doesn't. I just wondered if there was a reason it didn't mention CIA and if that would make a difference. I don't know. I'm just asking because it's incorrect.
It makes no difference in that the project does not emit hazardous materials, and therefore that section of the initial study, when you go through an environmental analysis, you identify which sections are applicable. This section is not, because this project will not emit those hazards.
Except during construction. So that's what I'm assuming is also an issue.
Construction impacts are considered temporary under CEQA and are different than the impacts that this section is referencing.
Okay, so that quarter mile thing doesn't apply to the construction.
Not in this context, that's right.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
John?
Discussion now?
It's your turn.
Well, I think the public gets a
Do you
discussion.
have any questions?
I don't have any questions of the applicant at this time. No.
I don't either.
I have one more question, I'm sorry. But, in the liquefaction issue, was there a person who was I know that the soil, was the soil at that site looked at by someone who is an expert in liquefaction? And because one of the paragraphs says that the project area is mapped out as having moderate, high, and very high susceptibility to liquefaction. And then the other paragraph says that the bridge is designed in accordance with AASHTO LPFD bridge design specifics and also meets CBC regs. But I have been told that I don't know if they came and someone who was expert in the liquefaction actually looked at that site, because that would be significant since the area could be very high risk.
Yeah, so the entire Napa region is susceptible to strong earthquakes, which can, given the right soil conditions, cause liquefaction.
Right.
So we had a geotechnical engineer, Mid-Pacific Engineering, come out and take borings at each side of the bridge location where the abutments are going to be founded, and looked at the soils in that area and determined that the liquefaction risk at this site for this bridge, given the loading that we have, is low.
Okay.
And so the abutment foundations we have are spread footings, which are not dug super deep into the foundation.
5 feet.
If we were very concerned about liquefaction, then we would use a different foundation type. But the liquefaction risk for this site, for this structure, is deemed low by the geotechnical engineer.
I think that's answered on page 69 and 70 in the negative deck.
Well, I just didn't know, it didn't say whether that specific piece of area had been tested.
I think it's talking about the general area, Bobby.
I know,
and
but
I think you're supposing
perfectly fine.
something's going to happen, and I don't think we can do that.
I'm not supposing. My question was answered. I had a specific question that I was told was important, and I appreciate your answer, and that is answered to my satisfaction. Thank you.
All right, no problem.
Yeah.
Any other questions? I'll open public comment. Does anyone have any public comment, please?
Mike Griffin, 1824 Park Street. This project, I've got some issues about it. Linking these two pieces of properties together is just opening the door to have uncontrollable, events between the hotel and Behringer's. I know some of them have so many they can have a year. I mean, right after we just been beat up in this neighborhood over there over the hotel, Behringer's, CIA, and everything. And to this date, nothing's really been solved over all the issues that were brought up in those projects. And linking these two together, now it's just going to throw more salt in the wound. I mean, they haven't really resolved the pedestrian safety yet at that intersection. I sat there today and watched a lady trying to cross the street and was like, when should I go? Put a bullseye on my back, I'm going to get run over. That's the way it is. You're sitting right on the edge there. The parking for the employees and the guests, they've done something there at the church. That's good until Saturdays, and then it all flows back in our neighborhood again. The deliveries continue for everything at the hotel, from food to linen, you name it. They take it to Behringer's. They shuttle it across Main Street, causing more traffic problems. In the Planning Commission meeting, Eric Gillen, the general manager of Behringer, said that stuff would cease immediately if it was causing a problem. Well, it still continues. They're still delivering the food over there, and who knows whatever else. And it just goes by my house half the time because they can't get across Main Street, so they cut down Park Street, come up, get in the left-hand turn lane so they can get up the hill into the hotel. They try to get off the hotel. They try to get over to Pratt Avenue. And they can't get across, so they just take the least flow. So they go south on Main, come around Cornella, up Park Street, over to Behringer's or wherever, and just continue, and these problems and nothing's getting done. And then now here you have another one that's going to link them both together. They said they're going to put gates on it. Well, most of your functions they're doing at the wineries and at the hotel are going to be at night. And so who's going to control all this stuff? You have no way of policing it. The neighborhood gets the impact of it. not the city, or anything like that. It's all the neighbors around there. We've had enough of it. And it's just one thing after another that just keeps going on and on and on, and then now they're coming piecemealing more and more in there, just like Behringer's are piecemealing their big production facility over there going. So, this has got to come to an end sometime, and I don't know when. You just keep approving these things until the old issues aren't even, fixed yet. So it's one thing after another. So I think you just need to put a hold on these things until we get some of these other issues addressed. Thank you.
Come to the podium, please.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jim Gertson. I live at 1823 Park Street. And it's amazing when you're gone for a while and then you come back, you can really see changes. A week ago, last Friday, I got back from New York. I've been there since mid-December. Don't ask me why I went to upstate New York in the middle of December, but I did. Anyway, coming back, the neighborhood, I live across the street from the Griffin family. I was in touch with everyone by phone over all those months, and their extreme concern over all the parking problems they had that has been partially resolved. But I just didn't get the feeling as a neighbor that not everyone who's new in our neighborhood is a really good neighbor. They're more interested in making a hotel, I guess. I had a note, and I'll be quiet here after this, from another person who had concerns. The shuttling and sharing space links the two properties together like a partnership. Does that include partners on things like water, sewer, and owners? And that may have already been addressed, but this is just a note that someone gave me. Thanks for your concern, but the one nice thing about coming back after 8 months, I'm sorry it happened, but that landslide on Pratt, that's where I take my walks every day. And I was here at another planning meeting, 2 or 3 years ago, and at that time I had counted 220 cars going up and down Park Street in a 2-hour period, and I shared that with the Planning Commission. It's now dipped down to 4, so personally I'm in no hurry for that landslide to be fixed either. So, thanks a lot.
Any more public comment? I'll close public comment. I think I'd like to address the fact that we are not discussing the past problems. I think that all we're discussing this evening is whether we approve the bridge between the two pieces of property. And I think we should limit ourselves to that scope. So, anyone have some comments to make?
Yeah, I do. To start with, this bridge goes between not just two parcels, but two different zones.
Correct.
And most of what was brought up by staff addresses the SC designation, not so much the winery designation. So, in fact, the staff report's written that way. And I see where the SC designation, probably this would be literally an appurtenant structure. A pertinent structure. I'm wondering if the same reasoning applies to the W zoning. Because it seems to me we have to meet both sets of standards because it starts in one and ends in the other.
I agree.
So clearly I can see where the SC designation, this would be an appurtenant structure. So I'm hoping for the same sort of reasoning made by staff for the winery zone. That's thing one. Thing two, this is, for this city, a relatively large structure. 65 feet in a single span is probably the longest span length in town of any bridge. Pope Street is 120 some odd feet, but there's 2 pillars in the water. Pratt's considerably shorter, and there's one pillar in the water. This is also a private structure. The only other private bridges I know of in town, bridge-like structures, cross over city drainage easements. And ergo, the city has control of what goes over the top of them and how they are monitored. This will be basically an unmonitored structure. And I'm a little anxious about 65 feet worth of unmonitored structure, particularly given the fairly recent series of unfortunate events in Berkeley where they had a balcony collapse due to poor maintenance. And guess who took the brunt of the lawsuit?
Berkeley.
The city of Berkeley. So one thing I would suggest that we consider is some sort of requirement that the owner have the bridge assessed every few years as to its structural integrity and the maintenance that is necessary. That no offense to the applicant, but I kind of doubt they would have a structural engineer in their maintenance department. But I think that would be a wise thing to do. We certainly wouldn't want to be tagged with a very big lawsuit 20 years from now when the bridge probably wouldn't need some maintenance. But I'd like to see some sort of requirement for, I don't know, every 3 years, every 5 years, whatever is a good choice for this type of structure, to have it assessed to see where it is. And not that the city would have any control over it, but they would see it, and yep, here's the assessment. So those are a couple of comments. I'm hoping for some reasoning for the W zone, and I'm hoping that something be included for a maintenance exam. Third thing on this structure is, it's built above the 100-year floodplain. At least that's the statement in here. We've had at least 300-year floods in the last 30 years, more or less. So 100-year floodplain, although it's standard, doesn't give you a lot of space around here. I don't know about York Creek in particular. This is basically the river, so I don't know what the 100-year floodplain occurrences are like around York Creek. But given how often the river goes over its 100-year numbers, I'm a little anxious about this structure having some sort of damage, potentially catastrophic damage. And so I don't know how this is going to be regulated in terms of it's open, it's closed, it needs an exam to reopen. I don't know how that all is cleared on a private bridge. I know we're just doing this as design review, but this seems like a different kettle of fish to me other than a sidewalk.
I agree.
So, 3 questions of staff, basically, and a request to the council to consider a requirement for...
I've written that down. We get to put that in the
Okay.
resolution. Yeah. If
That's
we decide to approve this. David, you have some comments? Okay. Bobby?
I do. I have a lot more, but I'm hoping that at least as many of mine are as well spoken and well taken as the 3 that were just given. On page 6, there is a report about the Native American issue.
Page 6 of what?
Safe of the all of the pages are the mitigated negative deck.
Thank you.
Whichever copy you want, the one in your packet or the one out here. Okay, so I called James Sarnado. He's the person at the Yoka Dehe Winton Nation, and he didn't know about the email that we had sent inviting comment. But what he did say to me, I thought was interesting, and I'd like to know what you guys think, but I would like to see it happen. I spoke with him. He found nothing alarming in the project necessarily, but he did request that we allow for a Native American habitat sensitivity training on site with one of his people for the benefit of the crew to become more informed about cultural standards and standard mitigation measures if remains are found. I know some work has already been done. I read that, but they have their own presentation. For example, all work must stop within 100 feet of the discovery of any bones, and the coroner must be contacted. And that's probably what you have said already, but I thought that that their tribe might have some additional information and cultural sensitivity that we don't, and that public agencies don't necessarily have. So let's see. Yes, okay, and so on page 54, Tribal Cultural Resources Impact Discussion 5.17AI. This says no impact, and I think it should say at least less than significant, just to be accurate, given all of this information. So, okay, then the next thing I had was about the lighting. I have other questions about the bridge. For example, I'm assuming there's not going to be a physical barrier between the bike path and the pedestrian path. It's all going to be one, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that it will operate more as a pedestrian path. And, I mean, the applicant maybe can speak more to this, but I think the bike path was just kind of a erroneous reference. I think it's going to operate as a pedestrian path.
Well, I'm not comfortable. Well, go ahead. Yeah.
I'd like to add too. 10 feet wide is the standard for a Class 1 bike lane, which is, Class 1 path, which meets the requirements to separate bicycle and pedestrian traffic. Essentially, you have 5 feet traveling, 5-foot travel lanes established for the bicycles and the pedestrians moving in opposite directions. So that is a standard dimension for pathways that are intended to serve both bicycles and pedestrians at the same time.
To address the bicycle use, I agree with Lily. It's really not feasible to ride a bike from one side to the other.
Okay.
On the Las Alcobas side, there's basically a building, stairs, or an elevator. So you either have to enter the building, go through the elevator, or ascend stairs. So there's not going to be a lot of people riding bikes.
So there won't be any, is what I'm hearing.
No, that's not.
I mean, is there a road that they could take if they did ride?
You
That's what I'm hearing
could
you say.
physically ride your bike from the Behringer parking lot across the bridge, and then you would have to dismount your bike to either walk up the stairs, enter the building, or go up the elevator. So physically it is possible, but
it's not really intended for that.
Bobby, yeah, it's it's not intended to be a bike thing. We can even put up a sign there saying no bikes.
Okay, because people who've
Understand
been
your
drinking
concern.
and people who've been riding bikes.
Absolutely, it's about pedestrian.
Okay, thank you for that. Then let's see. There was. I guess I'm going to do that. Let's see. Well, the other thing about the bridge too is that there's going to be garbage cans on each side, and there are going to be people going up there with wine glasses, probably maybe food, whatever. There's going to be garbage there, in the can and not in the can. I mean, it's just going to happen. So I would like to see something in there. You guys would have some kind of an agreement with both of you to at least have, at least 2 times a day, someone would monitor and maintain the garbage situation, particularly cigarette butts. And I'm thinking if you had no smoking signs with ashtrays like 20 feet from the bridge, because if cigarette butts get in the water, which I used to smoke, I know they go where they go, that can hurt the fish that are going to be there after the dam is down. So if there's a place to put cigarettes 20 feet on each side and an agreement between you guys to monitor and maintain the garbage situation around the bridge so it doesn't get in the water or on the sides.
Absolutely. Both Behringer and Las Alcobas, we pride ourselves as being first-class organization from a guest perspective, from an employee perspective. Absolutely, we want to make sure that whole area is kept pristine.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. We can come to an agreement with Behringer too. Yeah. There's no problem at all.
Okay. Yeah,
we are happy to even remove their trash if they
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, let's see. I'm assuming I couldn't figure out where it was from the stuff we got. I'm assuming there was a place for emergency vehicles to get close to the bridge in case somebody falls down, breaks their shoulder or something. So ambulances and fire trucks can get there, I'm assuming, yeah.
On the Behringer side, the abutment lands in one of their parking lots, so the emergency vehicles could pull right up to the edge of the bridge.
All right, from there, thank you.
Well, they also can do it at Las Alcobas, because it's not very far from their turnaround. Maybe 10, 15 feet at the most.
Okay, no smoking, quiet area. Oh yeah, and well, you don't have to do that. I was really getting ahead of. I thought, wow, if you had little signs there, quiet area, that'd be nice too. But and then I wonder what you're going to do about the bridge trolls. But that was a joke. So, because whenever you build a bridge, you have trolls.
I'll send you up there.
And I had some other things here. Let's see. There were some places in here, I won't do it now, but that I thought this document had some contradictions. For example, the part about the let me find it. There's a part about using dry power sweeping. Okay, on page 43, under 1.9, offset paved areas and sidewalk pavement shall be cleaned regularly using dry sweeping methods. On page 24, mitigation measure says all visible mud or dirt track out onto adjacent public roads shall be removed using wet power vacuum street sweepers at least once a day. The use of dry power sweeping is prohibited. So, what?
One's to address construction impacts, and the other's to address ongoing maintenance.
So ongoing maintenance does not have the prohibition against dry power sweepers? It doesn't? Okay.
Correct.
Well, thank you for clarifying that. It was not clear to me. And
P, it's a particulate matter.
Turn on your-
yeah.
It's a particulate matter
Yeah.
address.
Okay.
Why they have to do the wet.
Right, but I guess they don't care after. It's just maintenance.
Once you've mitigated your construction, you're done.
Okay. So anyway, I think I would like to see. I mean, I'm hearing a lot of agreement about. It seems like some of the points that you brought up would take some time to clarify and to understand.
I will admit I talked to staff about my W versus SC concerns earlier. I believe they're ready to respond to that. I also spoke about the monitoring requirement. Although that's a commission decision, they heard that, and they heard my concerns about flooding as well. So I believe. Oh, hey. One more concern that I did mention to you as well is the long-term maintenance of the stream channel there, particularly once you do the mitigation and pull out all the berry plants and all the cane. That stuff's going to come roaring back, and I don't know what's included in the maintenance agreement between the two parties. I would hope that is in there. Otherwise, you're going to be right back where you started from.
John, are you talking about the creek bed? The Arundel and stuff on the creek bed? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah,
Okay.
the berry
I
plants in the stream bed and the cane growing on the edge, yes.
That's
the
Arundel,
non-native
I believe.
species.
That's correct.
I have a question for the applicant or perhaps planner Bianco about what is this? I can't find it. What is the bridge rated at in terms of weight?
So the bridge being 10 feet wide, it's rated for basically a medium duty truck to be able to drive across it. It's also rated for the ADJOURNMENT requirement of 90 pounds per square foot, which is difficult to achieve in real life, having people stand next to each other to achieve that type of load. So it's structurally, there will be no issues with the bridge.
Okay, and it'd be interesting just to follow up on my fellow commissioner's question about the floodplain. Do people in general in building pedestrian bridges build to a higher standard than 100-year, or is 100-year very typical for these sorts of projects?
100-year is very typical for this type of project. Caltrans kind of fallback requirements for vehicular bridges, which this is not, but would be to clear the 50-year flood plus sufficient freeboard for whatever debris you anticipate, or clearing the 100-year water surface elevation.
3 foot.
And
3 foot of freeboard.
And this creek, the prior bridge on this creek is Spring Mountain. Is that correct? Like, I'm thinking about material coming down from the hills. There's a series of bridges, right? And so where does material get stuck?
I don't know where York Creek originated.
Well,
I know the bridge is crossing up until you get way up high.
In New
Well-
York, that's where it originated.
well, well, I mean, there's clearly a bridge in town that before it would hit this potential pedestrian bridge.
Yeah, well, after.
Well,
After.
before, because up the hill. Oh,
No.
I mean, how does the right?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So the
yeah,
bridge
yeah.
at Dean York Lane. Right. So I'm very curious. Perhaps I didn't see it. Perhaps the question that I have is really the only material you're looking for is material that would fall between that bridge and this pedestrian bridge. Anything that falls, if this is a 100-year flood, which occurs with surprising frequency, it would get trapped by the bridge on Dean York Lane before it would flow down to this particular bridge.
Maybe. Maybe it would overflow it. Yeah.
Well, I'm not a water engineer, but from seeing the effect of floods in other locations, usually the low bridge is the one that gets
I see.
messed up. Right.
Well, the Pope's Bridge, the rain we had last winter, it came within 2 feet of the
Yeah, it was very close.
bridge.
Yeah,
It did.
super close.
Yeah, because we took pictures of
And
it.
that would have been very stressful for that
Yeah.
bridge, for example, had it
So are you
given
saying
materials.
the York Street Bridge would prevent the Behringer Bridge from having, it would have less problem because
Unless
it's
that
there.
bridge failed, and then
Yeah.
all the material would
All of it would
continue
come down, yeah.
onwards
Yeah.
to this particular bridge. Then we've got real problems.
Well, you get flows underneath the bridge that's upstream that somehow accumulates on the one downstream for whatever reason. Like you said, water's a strange animal. You can never really tell.
That's correct.
I was just sort of curious as to the nature of other bridges that cover this creek. And I guess the only other bridge is this the Dean York Bridge. And we don't know, I believe it wasn't part of the analysis, we don't know whether that's a 50-year bridge, a 100-year bridge, at all.
A 2-week bridge.
So do you think we should check that out?
I'm not certain we need to, but
I don't think so.
it's something that's,
I mean, that's a probability. It's not a.
well,
Well,
if we're
all-
worried
all of
about a
this is
100-year
about
bridge.
probability.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a
Okay,
probability.
I have no more questions. Thanks.
Well, I remember when I did research about the levee a few years ago on another issue, and since global warming or climate change, whatever you want to call it, has happened, they're not necessarily looking at a 100-year flood. They're looking at a 300-year flood, and that standard is changing in certain places. That's what it said then. I think maybe Ms. Smithies knows more about that than I do, but that's my understanding right now. But
Well, the levee was built for a 200-year flood.
I have, 200, yeah.
That's correct.
I have I want to respond to the public concern about the partnership aspect of this bridge. And I'm thinking that, I'm wondering, I would like to continue this until both people from Las Alcobas and Behringer can have a meeting with people in the public to discuss this and to talk about it. Because I've heard from other people in the public a lot of concern about this. The trust level is low because of the traffic and the parking, these past issues that we're not supposed to talk about tonight, but
That's right.
they are in the room, and the trust issue is low. And so that's what I would like to see. I would like to see an opportunity for that to happen.
Hi, I'm Jen Locke. I head up all of direct-to-consumer for Treasury Wine Estates, and it's my responsibility to oversee the Behringer hospitality side of the street. And I just wanted to address the comment that you made, and really at the core of this project, sort of irrespective of the other issues, is safety. I don't know if you've had a chance to walk down that street, but I think as you brought up, it's actually a pretty dangerous corner. And we do have the York Creek Bridge that we currently maintain and have for many, many years. So this actually would be the second bridge that would be in that area. We maintain the current pedestrian bridge that covers York Creek that leads onto the street. And so at the core of this, and I can appreciate the sensitivity around the perceived partnership, but actually we've worked really hard to try to mitigate the impact by being good partners to Las Alcobas to help with parking and some of those things, since they didn't have any place to go, even though the city approved the hotel. Quite frankly, I think there's got to be some ownership with the city on approving a plan without some of these issues being resolved. Behringer's just tried to help mitigate and be good neighbors. That said, they're a hotel. Their guests want to come to our property, and the last thing we need is a fatality on Highway 29. And so at the core of the whole spirit of this thing is about safe passage and not encouraging people to make poor decisions, during the height of traffic or at dusk or any of those other times, and giving them a safe alternative route.
Thank you.
And I would just add, the decision today must be based on the project before the commission. Other elements that are not a component of this project cannot be utilized in making decision-making factors this evening.
Well, the fact that this is a partnership is part of what we're looking at tonight. Is that not true?
Bobby?
No,
Bobby,
yes?
that has nothing
It's
to do with
design review.
I'm sorry, I have to, just one more comment about that. It's really important that we distinguish that we are in no way a partnership with Las Alcobas. We are completely separate operating entities. We have different ownership, and we have different needs and how we fit in the community. So it's dangerous, and I would encourage you please not to infer that this in any way is a partnership. We are trying to be good stewards of the community and mitigate risk as it pertains to human life and potentially a fatality on Highway 29. So just so we're clear, Treasury Wine Estates is a publicly traded company, and in no way are we affiliated with the hotel from an ownership perspective.
But is this project being done in a partnership, or is just one of you paying for it all? Las
Alcobas was the project applicant. It is their project. However, because it lands on the Behringer property, certain elements of, as Commissioner Pont mentioned, the winery zoning, the access from the winery had to be looked at as a component of this project, but it is Las Alcobas' application. They are responsible for the construction costs. All elements of the project are funded by them. And I would just like to respond to some of the things I've heard. Specifically, Ms. Monette requested a condition regarding maintenance of trash and garbage removal. That is completely within the purview of design review for a new structure, and staff feels that that condition could be added to any approval of the project. Similarly, the project has been conditioned to require, and a copy of the maintenance agreement, an easement has been provided, but there is a maintenance easement requirement for the bridge, and the applicant is required to fund that through an escrow account, so there will be funds set up dedicated to that, separate from any ownership of the property or the use. And then along the same lines of what was mentioned by Commissioner Pont, it is within the purview of the commission to add a condition that the structural assessment of the bridge be provided every 5 years, or whatever the recommendation of Director Smithies would be. And I believe Ms. Bianco could respond to some of the other concerns voiced by Commissioner Pont regarding the elements of the bridge as they relate to the winery zoning district.
All right, now may I have my turn? I have only one thing. I agree with... Go ahead and laugh, John. I always take my turn sooner or later. I'm concerned about, in your negative deck, it's indicating there'll be no glare because there's going to be no lights. And I am concerned about lights in the evening, and I don't know if we can do something with that. I think we should. I'm concerned with the safety after dark. And I know that they have a lot of events there, and I happened to be up there yesterday for lunch, so I've kind of seen the whole thing. I walked the whole project yesterday, and I am concerned with the night lighting, the safety of the people going back and forth if it's after dark. And I don't know how we deal with that. Because in the negative deck, they indicate there would be no glare, so we weren't worried about that, and I understand that if we're only using it until it's dark. But if after dark, then I think we have a problem.
I would like to wait and hear, and are you comfortable not seeing if all the regulations for the winery piece of it are...
I think staff is ready to answer that question.
right
I
now.
think they will as we get along. But on the lighting thing, Grace, it doesn't have to be just dark. Low light conditions. If you have vision problems,
That's
low
correct.
light conditions trigger the ADA, not darkness.
Okay.
So even twilight, you'd have problems.
Yeah.
So to address the lighting question, one thing we could incorporate into the project relatively easily is low lights that shine directly onto the bridge deck itself. That way, what we don't want is a bunch of light spilling onto the waterway,
I understand
impacting
that.
fish species.
Yeah. And I understand that because I stood there at the end of the building where you're going to start that yesterday.
Yeah.
And I looked at that, and 65 feet is a lot longer than we're used to dealing with here in town and this type of thing. And I really think that by the time you get to that middle, even at twilight, in particular with somebody that's not seeing well.
Yeah.
So if we can put something in the resolution to that effect, I'd be happy to approve it with that. And the things that he's mentioned also, and the maintenance, we can list those, John, but I would like to hear Lily's explanation on the difference in the SC and the W and,
Right.
all that stuff.
Yes, it's
You
a
like that one,
pretty
John?
straightforward answer. So the winery zoning district has the same provision as the SC district, which applies to accessory uses, buildings, and structures. And under the winery zone standards, under section 17.20.050F, it specifies that other uses and structures which are customarily incidental and clearly subordinate to permitted and conditional uses would be permitted in this district. So, is that the right one? Sorry. Hold on one moment. Winery. I take that back. It is 17.24.050D, which says the same thing. So most of the zoning districts, and particularly SC and W, do allow those uses that are customarily incidental and clearly subordinate to permitted uses, which we took to mean like the pedestrian bridge would fall under that.
Does that satisfy your question, John?
Yeah, but then I would think the argument becomes, is a bridge customarily incidental to a winery?
Yeah. So, my understanding of that is that they, it's a circulation improvement to facilitate safe travel for pedestrians, and that would be something that's customarily found with a commercial land use. And then it's also incidental, so it's reasonably related. It's, a pedestrian circulation feature to facilitate transportation, and it's subordinate. It's proportionally smaller than the other buildings and structures on site, and would be a...
I was just prompting you to give the full explanation.
Okay.
Instead of the shortened version.
Erica, what would your recommendation be on a structural engineer checking this out? How often would you suggest
I was just
that?
trying to look back, because I know for highways, Caltrans standpoint or FHWA, it's every 2 years for vehicle bridge. I'm not sure if it's the same for pedestrians. I wouldn't want to go any... I wouldn't want to assume what it is. I was just trying to look it up online right now on what the minimum requirements would be. But at the least 2 years, consistent with FHWA standards, unless there's another...
The condition language could be written broad enough to reference the appropriate standards for pedestrian and bicycle bridge maintenance and assessments, which would then meet the requirements of the law. In theory, hopefully satisfy the condition of the commission without us knowing the specific date as of today.
I have another something more to say about the lighting on the bridge, even that low lighting. I mean, I think that's the answer. But I just looked up, the effect of lighting on. It repels animals, and it also attracts insects. And certain lights attract insects, and if bats are around, they need those insects. But other kinds of lights don't. The LED lights, they're different. You can look at this little article if you want. And so I'm just wondering if there could be a time when the lights go off after the nighttime events would be over, so that the nocturnal animals and critters would not be affected by the extra lighting, even if it's just those low lighting. And also I was wondering if you guys were completely went to sleep, or weren't concerned with respect to James Sarmento's request that he be able to come and do a cultural sensitivity training for the crew. Is that something you guys think would be appropriate? Or I would like to see that, but I don't know if any else would, if you care about it.
I'm just thinking construction-wise, this is a relatively quick job. I mean, it's sort of the cousin to bringing the railroad flatbed in and dropping it across the creek. What's your construction schedule? 5 weeks and you're done kind of thing? It would be relatively quick.
Well, I think it's longer than that, but they are excavating, and I just think it's important.
Yeah, we're excavating between 3 and 5 feet into what is not native soils, so the risk we would encounter.
Not native soil? What do you mean?
Basically, fill materials that have been developed over
The years.
the years. Yeah, not into the cultural history. Basically, so the risk that you would encounter anything would be small because of the relatively shallow depth you're digging, as well as the footings are pretty small. They're about 8 feet by 12 feet.
Well, and how long is your proposed construction schedule?
The excavation is probably a couple days.
Yeah, but
that
the whole thing.
The whole thing is
5
probably,
weeks, maybe.
Yeah, maybe 2 months at the most.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't people?
In other words, it's going to eat up a relatively large proportion of the workers' time to do this. It's not like you're building a very large flood control project that takes several years. This is going to be a relatively short project.
If it takes, I know. I just seem to me, why not be informed?
Well,
but if you obviously, I'm the only one who thinks so. But
staff has concerns over the legal ability of the commission to require that in the context of this small scale project.
Well, okay. Okay, thanks. Did you?
Do we still have a discussion going?
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Kistner. I'm broadly supportive of this. I think it eliminates traffic on the highway, and it's two commercial properties abutting themselves. Why not make improvements between them? I am, though, and this is outside of our decision, I'm very concerned that the Park Cornella neighborhood is not seeing the effects of reduced truck traffic that were promised by Behringer. That is surprising to me and disturbing, since we did have a Behringer representative here a couple months ago to discuss
David,
that.
I believe that there's 2 council people working on that now.
Oh, great. And then
Is that correct?
We're actually drafted truck ordinance we're trying to bring into first reading in September sometime. So
I think the council is working on
Great.
that, and I don't think we can
And
get
parking?
into that. Huh?
And parking? Too?
We need to
We've
stick
already
to
addressed that.
we
We
need to stick to the item on the agenda.
That's correct. Do I have a motion? You think you can do it, John?
With the discussed additions to the conditions, I move the item.
what are the
Do we have
discussed?
to?
So,
Okay.
to summarize, condition that a structural assessment be conducted of the bridge in keeping with established pedestrian bridge criteria and will reference the appropriate agency that establishes that criteria when I have a chance to speak with
How about adopted bridge criteria? Because there may be no standards for pedestrian bridges. I don't remember ever seeing one.
I'm seeing that it says they keep reverting, even the Fish and Wildlife Service reverts back to FHWA, so I would assume Caltrans.
So 2 years.
Without looking further, I would say industry standards.
Structural assessment be conducted according to industry standards for bridges. Lighting to meet ADA standards be installed, but is turned off when the bridge is closed and not in use. And maintenance of the trash cans and garbage removals be required of the applicant.
There was
Motion
no
stands.
Long-term maintenance?
That's built into their agreement, right?
Okay, all right.
Which I don't think
They
we've
said they
seen,
would,
but nonetheless.
Okay.
They said they would do that.
Got a motion on the floor.
And there's 3 of us. I second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Pont,
Aye.
Commissioner Knudsen,
Yes.
Commissioner Monette,
No.
Chair Kistner.
Yes. Let me see if I can find my agenda again. The next item is 5.2. It's a request for design review approval to construct a 2-story single-family residence on the vacant flag lot at 1045. Is that 1045 or 1025? 1045. Okay, Pratt Avenue in northeast St. Helena in the medium density residential zoning district. I have a staff report, please.
Thank you, Chair Kistner.
Where did I see 1025?
The project includes a request for design review approval to construct a 2-story single-family residence on the vacant flag lot at 1045 Pratt Avenue in the MDR zoning district. The residence, as I said, would be 2-story asymmetrical residence with a detached garage and carport. It would feature shiplap and board and batten siding, comp shingle roof, and would be punctuated by metal-clad wood windows. A small covered porch would be located at the property's entrance with wrapped wood supports. The floor area ratio would amount to 0.232, accounting for the porch and garage exemptions. And the maximum height, as measured at the peak of the roof, would be approximately 21 feet 10 inches. The subject property is a vacant flag lot of approximately 15,700 square feet and located directly behind 1025 Pratt.
That's where I got 1025.
Yeah. The tentative and final map approving the flag lot occurred in the early 2000s. Condition 14 of the tentative map approval specifies that future construction on the sites should comply with the development standards for the MDR zoning district and shall generally be in compliance with the conditions, which included one, that the maximum non-exempt floor area allowed on Lot 2, or what is 1045 Pratt, is about 3,632 square feet. The maximum height of the structure shall be 22 feet, and a total of 3 covered parking spaces shall be constructed consistent with an exhibit. The required yard shall be at least 25 feet along the north property line, 21 along the south property line, and then 12 feet along the east and 13 feet along the west. Note, too, that these requirements are somewhat qualified by Condition 15 of the tentative map approval, which specified that all future construction that has not been considered with the 2002 application shall undergo design review prior to issuance of building permit, and that minor modifications could be approved by the planning director, with major modifications going to the planning commission. As proposed, the project meets all applicable general plan policies and development standards prescribed for the medium-density residential district. The proposed project is consistent with applicable general plan policies in that it proposes development on a vacant existing flag lot in a logical, orderly manner, and which will serve to utilize existing land within the urban limit line. Further, it is generally in compliance with the conditions imposed under the flag lot approval. The project deviates slightly in that it would introduce a detached garage or accessory structure, which would have a 10-foot setback on the north property line, which deviates somewhat from the original conditions, and would have 2 covered parking spaces as opposed to 3. It would also exceed the square footage requirements by about 30 square feet. Otherwise, as the proposed residence meets or exceeds requirements for setback and height, as noted in the original flag lot approval. For those reasons, staff finds that the project does exhibit general conformance as required under the conditions imposed on the flag lot and is able to meet the other applicable policies and regulations under the general plan and medium-density residential zoning. As conditioned, the project or the proposed residence meets all applicable design criteria. The design and materials are typical to residential construction and appropriate to the function and nature of the project. The proposed residence is located on an existing flag lot, and it has been oriented to logically facilitate ingress and egress. Privacy of neighboring properties, particularly those located to the rear of the flag lot, are addressed through appropriate window placement on the second story so as to minimize sight lines from the upper stories to neighboring yards. By providing for greater setbacks and placing windows to enhance privacy, the project appears to be compatible with the immediate environment of the site and neighboring properties. The project will also be conditioned to install porous pavers and a minimum of 3 15-gallon trees to enhance the landscape and soften the appearance of the residence. Given that, and as conditioned, the project is expected to meet all design review findings. As I noted in the staff report, there were concerns raised by neighboring property owners related to privacy and noise. In terms of privacy, after the applicant was made aware of the concern, they did raise the height of the second-story rear window, which would minimize sight lines that look directly onto the adjacent backyard. However, a follow-up conversation with the commenters did indicate that trees or some other type of screening planted along the back of the lot would be appreciated as a buffer and to further promote privacy. So that may be something that the Planning Commission wants to consider conditioning for the project. In regards to noise, there is no indication that the project would generate noise above and beyond what's typical of a single-family residence and is not considered by staff to be an issue at this point. So with that, the Planning and Community Development Department finds that the proposed configuration of the site, the overall design elements, and proposed materials and finishes are in character with the neighborhood and the community in general. And staff concludes that design review findings can be made and recommends that the Planning Commission accept the required findings and approve design review as conditioned for the proposed 2-story single-family residence on the vacant flag lot at 1045 Pratt Avenue.
Anyone have any questions of staff? I do, and it's a dumb question, but it appears to me that this is sideways on the lot. Everything else, everything else is facing Pratt Avenue, and this doesn't appear to be. I forget it, Lily. I've never seen that done before. It really disturbed me this afternoon. I had to look at it about 6 times. Thank you.
I was wanting to know if did anyone in the public talk to you about it being a short-term, the current house being a short-term rental?
Not exactly. The original, we got a comment before the project was even publicly noticed, and that neighbor they were the neighbor that had concerns about privacy and noise, and I think that the noise concern was based on them knowing that 1025 Pratt is a vacation rental, and they've had some concerns with noise being generated by that.
Is it currently a short-term rental?
I believe it is.
I wondered if you
is or it
checked
has
that,
been in the past.
It is within approval that they have a permit.
Yeah, they have a. It was
1025 Pratt Avenue is one of the permitted
Okay.
short-term rental locations.
Okay.
So I think that's where those concerns stemmed from.
Yeah.
But we don't have any indication that this house would be a short-term rental. They haven't
course
applied
not.
for it, so.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
there was probably no indication that the house that's currently a short-term rental was going to be a short when it was built.
It
So,
is,
all
yeah,
right.
it's
Thank you.
subject to discretionary review.
Would the applicant like to speak?
I would. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Thank you. State your name, please.
My name is Mark Andrade. I'm the applicant, and I've done everything, as everybody knows, going through this process with me to adjust, change, move, to make it that I'm not looking into somebody's backyard. So I think I'm good. Unless there's something somebody else wants me to do, I just need to know what it is, and I'll adjust. The trees, I know we had talked about that before. If the back neighbor would like some trees, just as when we used to have trees back there, and one of the neighbors asked us to take them out. So we took the trees out because I guess they were more of a weed, shrubbery type of a thing. So we took them out, and again, I'm not opposed to planting trees or doing what we need to do to be part of the neighborhood.
I assume they're concerned with the windows in your loft bedroom floor?
That's, the upstairs bedroom, and when that was made aware, I adjusted and made them high windows. I have no problem. We still meet egress looking out the front. And then even like if you look at the placement of the house, I mean, we're sitting in the center. I'm not pushed one way, so I tried
It just
to
looks strange to me. I shouldn't even mention, but I
it
couldn't
just sitting here and
resist.
said that. My original design, it was in the front pointing towards Pratt, but then I was told by staff that, no, the front should have been more like Donna Hines' property. So then I looked at Donna Hines and went through that whole thing with Donna, and that's how come it switched this way. So
Are you going to live in this house?
my brother and I own it together, and my brother will be spending more time than I will be, but it is our hope to actually move up here, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Thank you.
And thank you.
Now, I'll open public comment.
Yes, I'm Andy Pestone.
No.
I live at 1816 Cronulla, right behind this property. And, you know, we're facing the fact that this is what's going to happen. And I think that the owner has addressed some important issues, and it looks like it's on public record that the sightless windows are implicated, and that's going to happen, that kind of thing. My concern, too, is this going to be a residence? Because the other home these people own is like a hotel. It's a weekend rental. There are 6 to 10 people. It's like a sorority party on the weekends. They've been very good about, lately, we used to have to call in after 10 o'clock to get everybody to clam up because, we go to work, that kind of thing. But a lot of times it's rented on the weekends from Thursday to Sunday, that kind of thing. But there isn't any landscaping there. We get the sound of their barbecues, their parties. I even witnessed a wedding rehearsal there on the deck in back. So many big things happen there because it's such a big house. So it's very accommodating to have everybody pitch in and stay for the weekend, that kind of thing. I don't know if I'm going to be encountering that with this new home. Obviously, they are permitted on Pratt to do that kind of thing, but, there are several of us that are pretty diligent on chiming in if it's out of hand. That being said, I share my weekend barbecues with whatever group is over there because there isn't any landscaping. We are a single story. The deck is raised on the 2-story house on the Pratt Avenue that is the registered weekend rental, and so, the sound comes to us all the time, And so, I realize that is a permitted thing, and I just want to know that we're safe knowing what we're going to get when this house is built. What are the plans? Is it going to be a family home? I'm not sure. A weekend home, parties, that kind of thing? I don't know, because we border right there. There isn't really, we're probably on the shortest perimeter of the building, the end of the building to any other house. So, we have a 6-foot fence in back, with some lath work, and but that doesn't cover up sound that much. We've
Maybe
actually
some
got-
of this, so maybe some of this new construction will block some of the noise coming from the front of the property.
Well, sure. I mean, now this property, if you were now a monarch butterfly, you would really love this property at the moment because there's been no weed abatement. Weed abatement ends in the city in June. It's actively pursued by the fire department. To this day, if you were to go to this lot, the milkweed is higher than I am. There's a pile of mulch behind my fence that's been there almost a year since the trees were raised in back. There were some acacia trees that were cut down and a giant old walnut tree. Things were chipped and piled up right behind my fence. They're there to this point. So when we got all the rain this winter, leachate came out of that stuff, started moving in on my side. I didn't complain or anything, but I just feel that the lot hasn't been taken care of. We complained last year, and you guys went out and you mowed it, that kind of thing, but nobody's done anything this summer to it. And that's what we look through our lath work and our fence. So anyway, this is the other half of the story.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Mike Griffin, 1824 Park Street. My property is 3 yards over, and the 1025 Pratt, the party house, which the neighbors we call it now, it's continuously. And then now the gentleman says that him and his brother are thinking of living in this place. Well, that's 2 people. Why do you need 4 bedrooms, 4.5 baths? I mean, if you take one look at this project here, one would think, well, the CIA didn't get their way on the one side of Pratt Avenue. Now they're going to build a dorm over on this side on this flag lot. To me, I think these flag lots, every one of them is intruding in people's privacy, their views. You put this there, I can't even see the Eastern Hills anymore from the size of that house. It's right in my view. I look, if I walk out of my deck, that's what I'm going to see. Staring me in the face is that thing. So I think on these flag lots, you should really start looking at single-story homes. I'm not opposed to anybody. They own the land. They can build on it. But when it starts intruding these flag lots, and there's 2 of them there, side by side. Donna Hyde's got one. This gentleman's got one. I mean, it's the privacy to 68 neighbors just by that one there alone is going to be, intruded on your privacy. I mean, I bought that place to enjoy it, not to have to come down here all the time and keep fighting about our privacies and stuff with all the stuff going on in that neighborhood. One question is this thing going to be allowed to go on the vacation rental lot, list again? They're doing it in front. What stops them from adding it to the list when a place comes up, available on the vacation rental list? So then now you've got the house in the front with 3 or 4 bedrooms. You got another 4 bedrooms here. I mean, you look at the structure here. They're obviously looking at more people there because look how many places you got. You got 4 places for parking. That's more than some restaurants have downtown. I mean, it's getting to be crazy here. So my suggestion would be to maybe see if you could come back with, a single-story house on all these flag lots. Somebody was telling me that on the west side of town there was a flag lot, and that's what they ended up doing and kind of solved a lot of the problems. So, I mean, it's worth looking into. Thank you.
I'm Jim Gertson, 1823 Park Street. Yeah, I'm just concerned about the size of the house, and that it's in fact 2 stories. That someone would have to look at that, from their backyard deck after years of not having to do that. I'm just concerned about the privacy and the parking, and I walk by there every day, the homes there, and they really are, frequently kind of like a party house, and I don't hear the noise myself, but the people nearby me must, and I feel real concerned about the noise that they have to put up with. Thanks a lot.
Any further public comment?
Hi, I'm Heidi Holtzauer, and I live at 1824 Crenella, so I'm right behind that house. And I also want to just confirm what everybody else has said. I have a light that's on that shines from their house now into my bedroom over the weekends when it's a short-term rental, and I also hear the noise. So thank you for considering all the residents' comments.
Any further public comment? Would you like to reply?
So, yeah, I would just like to address a couple things. One is yours. The stuff in the back is, I agree, if you had said something to us, just as when we took down the trees in the first place, we would have gotten them cleaned up.
I just think it's untidy, that's all.
Yeah, and I agree, and we actually thought that this process was going to be... So we thought this approval was going to go faster, and it didn't on so many different levels. So it is required. It is required, and this is something we'll address immediately. So I didn't realize actually, and I do see it myself, and I really actually didn't think about that it was getting high enough, and I didn't know that there was something coming out of the pile of. We did have chips from the trees, so I'm going to address that as a neighbor. The rest of it, as far as lights, I mean, as far as this house is not being built to become a rental, and from listening to everybody, I know what the process was to go through it the first time, and I'm fairly certain that we wouldn't get approved for it anyway. So I just wanted to say that, and listen to this. It's not the reason, and they were talking about for two people. I have 4 girls, and my brother has 2 boys, so it's not just 2 guys as a party place. It's not at all. And my daughters are 9, 11, and 13, and I do have a 24-year-old, and my brother's kids are 13 and 15. So I just wanted everybody to be aware of that. So thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to open the discussion about it?
Okay. Oops. Oh, let's see. Now I have to think. Well, I was a little disturbed at how it seemed like what did they call them? The log regulations were just kind of kicked to the curb. What was supposed to be, a 25-foot setback, I think, turns out to be a 10-foot setback, and that's 60% reduction. That's for the north's property line. So the north, but then the word generally that the approval based on these things would be generally in compliance with the following. But that's a pretty big thing. I'm not comfortable with that 25 feet to 10 feet. And I remember 5 years ago when I was involved in a flag lot, and at the time we were really talking about when there are flag lots, especially if they abut on single-family zoning, that they be one story in order to respect the view sheds and privacy of the neighbors. And I think this is too massive for this location, simply because there are people around whose lives are going to be impacted. And I think that the applicant is a decent person, and it's an opportunity to really work with the neighbors in your project. And you have a lot of space there. I'm not telling you how to design a house, except I think 2 stories is aggressive and invasive from the perspective of a lot of people around you, around this project, and that it would be more in keeping with being a good neighbor and kind of doing the right thing to keep it a 1-story. And I would like to support that, because it has been discussed in the past, and there have been rulings at this body in the past based on that idea that flag lots have a 1-story dwelling, and And if that 10-foot setback, that change of 15 feet from what it was supposed to be to what it is now in the north corner, maybe that could be modified in some way to give more space. I'm not sure what that was about.
Yeah, can I speak to that real
Sure,
quick?
yeah.
So staff took it that those, the setbacks applied to the primary residence, and the primary residence does fall within those required setbacks. However, the detached accessory structure does not, which is the garage. But I will say that there is a condition in that original flag lot approval which specifies that future construction that wasn't considered when the flag lot was originally approved would go before either the planning director or the planning commission for your review. So that's pretty much planning commission's call as to whether or not you think that that's appropriate. But that was how we approached it.
So there was no reason to believe that those standards would apply to this application.
Well, yeah, we took it to apply to the primary structure, and there's also another condition in there that says for other components, you reference medium density residential zoning standards, which that does comply with those. So it was a little bit hard to reconcile all of the conditions, but that was how we interpreted it. But it's ultimately, your discretion on that.
Okay. I thank you for explaining that.
So similar to the medium density zoning district where the house and detached accessory structures have separate setbacks. That's how we looked at that and found it to be in general conformance, in that the house met the required setbacks of the map. The garage structure, while it does not meet that dictated setback, the medium density zoning district does allow different setbacks for accessory structures versus homes. And the approval of the lot did identify that the Planning Commission could review modifications to the previous design.
Okay. The other thing was I had trouble believing that a 4-bedroom house would only have one trip in the morning and one trip in the evening on the traffic analysis. I thought that was a little hard to believe. I mean, it seemed to me that the minimum would be 2. Somebody taking the kids to school and somebody going to work or whatever. But they said there'd be one trip in the morning and one trip in the evening. So I don't think that makes sense to me. And that's 263-12.
Yeah, I think that was associated with the original flag lot approval, and not with this proposal.
Well, so there's been no traffic analysis on this?
No.
Well, that's pretty misleading. Well,
yeah,
They'll typically do
yeah.
traffic impact analysis for the construction of a single-family home.
Okay, but with that particular street is so impacted that's why I thought it was there. But all right, well that helps explain why it doesn't make any sense to this application.
So Ms. Monette,
yes.
May I sort of jump in here?
Sure,
I'm
please,
doing a little bit of thinking.
Yeah.
Would you mind, Commissioner?
Go right ahead.
Yeah, great. Chairperson Kistner. I think that the owners seem to be incredibly accommodating. And I want to, I have no idea where you live, but I love the fact that you're willing to engage with your neighbors. That seems great. What about, and I'm just throwing this out there, what if he were to take the 2 rooms that were on the second floor and attach them to your garage and essentially eliminate the second floor, which seems to be the problem for the neighbors, and then you would have enough, you could do that as an additional outbuilding. It would fit in with the square footage requirements and might solve your problems in a way that would, be reasonable. And I'm just putting it out there as a potential idea.
And it would, I think it would help, finding number 6. I believe it's number 6 is always important to me. And that is, yes, with compatibility with future construction, both on and off site. Because, and that's an important finding, especially in this neighborhood, because so many of the lots there are flag lots, like there are 4 others, right? There are 4 other flag lots. So I think in order to keep the neighborhood at all in the way it is with large, like Little Rancheros, obviously the zoning has changed and it's going to be a change, but that would, the single story in the back so view sheds wouldn't be impacted. It seems to me, that seems like a really good solution to me too, and I would like to see that as a precedent. I know we don't do precedents, and everything is done on its own value.
We also don't design houses.
I know, but
So.
yeah, that's true.
John?
But we do have that number 6 in our findings, and I think that applies here.
Yeah, I have some questions about this one, concerns, statements as well. It seems to me this is another one of those that is a little off kilter. I mean, we've got a resolution by the city council that says, here's the setbacks, here's the size, da-da-da, boom, right? In the meantime, we have a zoning code that says A, B, C, D, which is different than what the resolution says. Sometimes more restrictive, sometimes less. So it looks like another one of those where we're going to have to use a little Kentucky windage to get where we need to go. You could probably, it's a shooting term. I'm sensitive to this two-story issue because I live in a neighborhood of one-story houses, basically. Cornell is basically a neighborhood of one-story houses. So you're going to have a two-story house backing up to you looking down. So I see where that's a concern. I understand it, and I appreciate it. In the meantime, this is really outside of Cornell. Hate to say it. Has a city council resolution that says what they can put on it. So at the end of the day, I think we're going to have to sort of try to thread the needle here, which means it's going to be another add to your list, Noah, when we go to work on the zoning codes to somehow wipe all these weird requirements out where we have individual resolutions for individual lots. That's nuts. You don't say you have to put 3 covered parking spaces on a lot where everybody else just has to have 1. And you don't do it for one lot and then do something else different from the next lot and different from the next lot. That's crazy. In the meantime, some of these things here, more trees in the back sounds like a great idea. You can go 8-foot solid fence by variance, right?
That's correct.
I think a use permit approved by the Planning Commission could allow us 8-foot solid fence.
I think this one should have a bloody 8-foot solid fence. As far as chopping off the second story, well, that's an option. Another option would be to make sure that all the glass on the second story is obscure. Light goes through it, vision does not. So that would cure your problem of somebody looking down in your backyard if it's obscured glass.
Still doesn't solve the problem of obstructed views.
It doesn't solve the obstructed views, but it solves the I'm looking down into your yard. The drainage thing, I'm pretty sure the city requires the drainage to stay on your lot and be accommodated on your lot or be sent out to the street. So that should be fixed at the end of the day with this project. It should send all the drainage onto the lot or out onto the street, and that's the end of that story. If you're getting stuff leaked back through your fence onto your lot from their yard, you got an item to action on.
It was saturated water in a pile of mulch.
It doesn't make any difference where the drainage comes from. I mean, what the source is. If it's from his lot, it's his problem, not yours. So that should be fixed with this project. And I would also agree that I don't think, given the neighbor's parents' strong objections, that a vacation rental would be approved at this location because of what's happening at the location in front. So I don't know how to handle the second story. The obscure glass allows him to keep the structure as it is, but it would have to be a condition. In other words, he couldn't switch it out to clear glass when the building inspector's back is turned. Not that nobody's ever seen that before. You've never seen that? I've seen that. So I think we do need to consider something for the neighbors, because they are one-story and a one-story development behind them. I don't know how to handle that exactly, but I would prefer something to see done to give that person a relief.
Yep, me too. Grace, you can.
Well, I guess the thing that bothers me is that the resolution that we're trying to follow is 15 years old. And I think times have changed in 15 years, and I know it runs with the land, but that bothers me, and the fact that we're doing that. I've heard the second story thing, and I basically agree with that. But in the same vein, I think that he's making an effort to do what the neighbors would like him to do. I think he's changed the windows on the second story. I really would have a problem with taking the garage out. I think that's what led me to believe that the lot looked strange, because I thought the garage was in the front of the house. I don't know, maybe you reverse them, I don't know. And then you'd have your second story. And I'm not trying to design it, but then you'd have a second story away from the property line. So, it's.
Well, I know.
I don't think I would deny the project. I think the project's clean. I think he's done as well as he can with the options that he has to work with. That's just my read on it.
And that's why I like the obscured glass. It's something you could do right
no
away.
problem with that.
Boom, it doesn't change the design of the house. It seems to at least partially satisfy the neighbors. And, you're not going to maintain your view shed anyway. Let's say somebody plants redwood trees in that lot. You're hosed no matter what happens, and there's nothing you're going to be able to do about that.
Well, looking at a redwood tree is different than looking at the side of a building. However, I hear what you're saying. Your point is well taken. But I know view sheds are not part of any CEQA things. I know they're not. However, what you look at when you come out your door is probably one of the most important things in terms of the character of your environment. And to get a building, that's huge. And even though it's not a secret issue, I take it seriously, and I think it's really important to help preserve our neighborhoods. That's in the general plan, the 93 one and the new one.
There's other 22 feet high buildings in that area.
I understand, but neighbors are saying this is going to hurt the quality of life.
Then we don't build any.
And no, a single story would be acceptable. So I think a single story. I think I really like that we're talking about that and that we're looking at it. And I would like to get that to be more of a norm when we're looking at these projects, even though it's not. It hasn't been said that it is in Sacramento or in our ordinance. So I like.
I'm going to kind of make the assumption here that our next shot at a zoning code will try to address these. If you're in a one-story neighborhood, you're one story. In a two-story neighborhood, you're two stories. But right now, we got what we got. And once again, we're back to threading that needle. We've got a city council resolution that says X number of square feet. And the guy's
21 feet high.
And 21 feet high. Yeah. I realize you're 30 feet over. Your setback isn't quite right. You don't have enough covered parking spaces, but that's all part of threading the needle on this, because I don't think it's fair to ask an applicant to provide 3 covered parking spaces when anybody else in the neighborhood just has to do 1.
We've got an incredibly capable, between planning director Hausch and planner Bianco, we've got an incredibly capable planning staff. To me, I'd like the applicant to try again. I really would. For example, if we take one of the conditions off, like, okay, the 30-foot or the 3 covered parking doesn't matter, but then the other one, you get 22 feet. I mean, it doesn't make sense to me. It just feels like there's a better solution here. And I'd love you to try. I really would.
And we can ask for a standard for where the direction we're going in. We don't have to wait until it's, before that's what moves things along, moves change, is the standards change.
I've got a question then. Are you requesting that they redesign to meet fully the City Council resolution, or that they redesign to meet the current zoning code for the lot?
No, I don't want to prejudge. I just think that there could be a better solution that would be ultimately better for that's
For the neighborhood?
Well, just for the people who are building and those that are impacted by the building, and it's within our purview to not approve projects. But I want to approve a project, but I'm not sure this is the right compromise, personally.
So maybe I can facilitate some discussion here. As mentioned by Planner Bianco, the resolution approving the final map, condition 15, does identify, in looking at it, while we didn't have the documentation in the file, we did assume that there was a design proposed along with the subdivision at the time, and that's where we felt a lot of the specific conditions came from, is that probably was being driven by the design that was proposed at the time. Getting Commissioner Pont's point, why would you require 3 covered parking spaces if someone wasn't already proposing it? So this condition, however, says any modifications to the current plans, further making us think there was a design that wasn't in the file, shall be reviewed by the planning director, who may approve the changes if they are minor, which we didn't feel these were, or may require that the plans be returned to the Planning Commission for further review. From staff's perspective, that gives the Commission the leeway to make some flexibility in some of the very specific design criteria that are identified, such as 3 covered parking spaces or these very specific setbacks. The height, I wouldn't get into stories because there's no discussion of stories, but there is a height. Okay. So the point I'm trying to make is that if the Commission wants to provide clear direction as to changes they would like to see with the design, I believe there is flexibility in how the applicant could meet that clear direction, irrespective of this resolution we have from the council.
It seems like the two difficulties circulate around two things. One, I think we can let go, and that's that it's going to become another rental. That seems like a low margin shot. The other one is basically having to do with view shed, both in and out, right? The neighbors looking up and them looking down. I'd hate to ask for a view shed analysis.
There is not the legal nexus to request that because none of our existing development criteria protect views.
Okay. Yeah. Once again, add that to your list, Noah, in the next zoning code.
The general plan does a 2035 general plan.
Okay. So
that's correct.
Apparently, we don't have the ability to ask for a view shed analysis.
We have the ability, perhaps, to consider that in our decision, in our request for.
It's design review, so if you don't like the design, you have to say something else other than height. I don't like the view shed problem.
Okay, well, or the height. I think the height is, you can say that.
Yeah, but we got a city council resolution that says it can be this high.
But he just finished saying that we don't have to go by
and our code allows a 22 height building.
I understand that, but we don't have to. We can ask for less.
I'm going to make a motion that we approve the project with the stipulation that Commissioner Pont wanted on the
I'm not sure you're going into the microphone.
The microphone.
The microphone.
Oh, hers is on.
They're on. Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Chair Kistner?
Yes.
Commissioner Pont?
Yes.
Commissioner Knudsen?
No.
Commissioner Monette?
No.
Motion fails.
So that motion failed. The commission does have the purview to make another motion or further discuss or to ask the applicant for additional input.
If I could ask the two commissioners who voted against it, is it the idea of the second story, in other words, the view shed in, or is it the idea of the second story, the view shed out? Or is it both?
I just think there's a real opportunity here for a more creative, another attempt at a creative approach that would make everyone happy. And maybe there's not, but at least, and I don't want to talk, there's nothing about a view shed or this, that, there's trees and, those things don't matter, but take another crack at it is my belief. I think the applicant can do a great job. I'm not necessarily disappointed with his design. It just seems like there could be a better one, and why not try? Given the neighborhood concerns.
And I think it's important for us to. I couldn't have the findings 2, 3, 6, 9, and 12. It's a difference in interpretation of the findings, but I couldn't find those. I couldn't, okay those. And I think that it is an opportunity to start a new approach where the neighbors
Expensive
and
approach.
if the neighbors and their desires are known right up front, and if there's more effort on anybody who's planning to develop here, to see that it's really important. You can't just come in and do anything. You're coming into you want it to be integrated appropriately into something that already exists. I know that we don't have laws that insist upon that, but it seems to me that is a cooperative and a less divisive and more considerate way and civilized way to behave in these circumstances where, sure, we have individual freedoms, but it doesn't mean you can go anywhere and do anything just because there's no law against it. And so I just think that feeling in St. Helena is important. And it's a small town, and we need to really care about how it will affect others, what we do will affect others, that's all. And I think this is in that direction.
I sort of find myself in a strange place again. We've got a city council resolution that says blat, 21 feet, yada, yada, yada. Once again, we're saying no to the city council.
Well, we could say yes to the city council if the design was exactly within their but it's not. And I don't even think that design would be the right design.
I thought Noah's explanation was pretty good. We aren't beholden to that resolution.
So
that was what
I guess I'd like to make a motion that we deny it without prejudice, meaning that they can come back, right? Knowing that,
I think we already have denied it.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, then we don't.
Well, what happened?
I don't know about any denial, but an alternative could be a continuance for redesign, again, with clear direction regarding the Commission's expectations.
That'd be great. Yeah.
I don't see how we tell them to redesign it.
Redesign it.
That's my personal opinion. I don't know how he redesigned it. Unless you take the garage out, and then I think we got
take
a problem.
the story out.
Well, yeah, I think he's heard the neighbors' concerns. He's seen the reaction of the Planning Commission, which was, frankly, to deny. 2-2 is a no. So I think we've already denied it without prejudice. If you want to,
so what? We haven't denied yet. We just haven't approved.
That's how 2-2 is taken.
Well, why don't we continue?
Yeah, the Commission does have the purview to make another vote, given that the motion before them was not to deny the project. However, again, if it's to direct a continuance, it needs to be with clear expectation as to what comes back.
Well, I think just taking.
I think we have to ask the applicant what he'd like to do. Would you like to speak?
Well-
That is correct, because the applicant could take his tied vote as a denial, and he has the ability to appeal.
And I'm appealing. So I've listened to this, and this is the thing. So everybody who's been through this with me, it's been a struggle finding out rules and what to follow. And as you can see, they complained I was going to look into their yards. I said, no problem. In fact, I even kept the house away from that side when we did this to make sure that we gave them the privacy. I spoke with Donna Hines for a long time about her design, which was already approved, which is going to block the view that you're referring to way before this house is going to. I stayed below. I followed the rules. And this is the thing is I'm sorry?
Those plans are invalid. They're over a year old.
She got a continuance, but that's
Extension.
Okay. Extension. Thank you. But the point being is I spent the time to go through this, and then when I hear you're saying, oh, you should spend more time or retry it, I don't have the energy to retry. If you tell me what you want done, I will adjust it accordingly. So taking out the second story, though, it's like I don't see how the second story is an issue because I'm below the height. So if I'm below the height and then you say, oh, move the rooms down to the side, then I end up over the lot coverage and not being able to stay even more within. So I put the garage on this side, and basically because it was at staff's recommendation on which way the front door faced, because like I said, my original was facing it the other way. I mean, this house has been flipped around 4 times already. And then I put the garage closer to a property that I already own, so that it, again, allowed for the other neighbors. I know they're saying our neighborhood is a 2-story neighborhood. I live on Pratt side. And if you go down the street, it's flag lot 2-story, 2-story, 2. They're all 2 stories except for 2 houses, I think. The rest of them are 2 stories. My neighbor's is 2-story. The Madavi place in the back, it's a 2-story. And it's taller than what we're proposing here. So we're below Madavi's height already. So I went through this, and when you talk about a redesign, it's like, I have to admit, I don't have the energy to scrap up. What I want to know is what needs to be adjusted or changed specifically, which Lily has been through this with me. Eric has been through with me. We went through step by step. Anytime there was points that came back, which there was a lot of very valid points with sewer and all of it, I went and did my research. I figured out what I needed to do, and I did it. So, and now the thing that concerns me in listening to this is there's no clear direction. I would just like clear direction. If you're going to say that it's not approved, I would like to know what I need to do to move in a direction that will get it approved, following rules that are rules. So,
welcome to St. Helena. Sorry, it's really complicated. What I would really like, though, is a continuance for my own analysis to understand the Pratt neighborhood better. You raised very valid points, and so I would encourage you not to take this as a no and let us continue it.
I'm thinking that what I would like, if you want something clear, is that you lower the height to accommodate the complaints where it is, and the part of the property that's near your other house, you can do whatever you want there because it's not close to single-family, single-story homes.
But I'm already farther back from the setbacks that are required and lowered the house within what's allowed. So I can't lower a house. I mean, even if I did a single story, then at that point it's going to change the design, which then the designs usually put in a steeper pitch roof, which is going to put me right back at the same height.
Right.
Because I've looked at that already. So, and that's
that's what I would want to see.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know how to do it or how you could.
Here's another crazy suggestion. Couldn't you throw the garage in the back and put the 2-story in the front?
I originally had it slid.
Oh, did you? Oh.
So
because that in that way,
but then I'm encroaching on the setback on the neighbors.
Well, right, but that's a better compromise, perhaps, than the current compromise, right? There's always going to be a compromise, right? So maybe that's a better compromise.
I've made lots of them, as you can see, because already if you look at the overall on the property, I set the house in the middle of the property.
Yeah.
If you look at any other house on that, they are all set back to the hilt. Even the front lot, I'm set by. Sorry, my reference to that is right.
What would happen if you just mirror image the house? So the 2-story section is in the front, looking the other way.
I am okay with that.
It's pretty simple. I mean, any CAD drawing will do it for you in about 3 minutes. Have you tried that?
I was told that I couldn't get the setback.
No.
garage, you're talking
I'm
about
not.
flipping the
I'm not telling you to change the setbacks, change anything. Just mirror image the house in the current location.
Oh, put the two-story the other way?
Yeah, put the two-story in the front. It's closer to the
If that will
garage.
take it out of the view shed of the neighbor.
So it moves it further away from the neighbors, right?
Okay, so is that a direct request then?
It flips the direction they're looking if you do it that way, or you can keep it that way. I don't know which one works better for you or the neighbors. So
This is the thing, when you look at the back, if you look at the back of this house, it's, again, the windows that we took, I mean, if I could see, like, take the windows out. They don't even have the high windows in. I can do that. I just like natural light.
I could
The height is good. The height is going to be the same for the. It's not the view shed from the rear neighbors. He was the one that brought up the. And
I could
he's
support
farther
a
down.
mirror.
He's over on Park.
I know.
So he can't see the house. He's not going to be able to see the house from, especially once Donna Heights.
What
goes
about the idea of having a powwow with all the neighbors, and then that might be clarifying for you?
I actually, this is, and I've heard what they've said, and I'm willing, but I've built homes before, and I'm not interested in a design by committee type of a thing. So I did and understood, and I follow the rules, and I'm understand rules.
As a compromise, Commissioner Monette, I mean, I think Commissioner Pont's idea is fascinating. First of all, you've got the existing footprint. It would take you no further effort to just flip it. It's basically it solves, and then you could have lower windows again and be able to look
I don't
at
know what the neighbors think of that, and maybe you'd have to creep the garage, up or back to give you better views from the windows that are now on that side. I don't know.
Well, the only thing so then I have to request here, then, if we're doing a design on the fly here, then is there any reason why, and do the neighbors have any problems with this, is if we actually do put the garage on the other side? Because it'll be low. I mean, the height of the garage is 12 feet, I think.
12 feet, 14 feet,
and then,
something like that?
Yeah, and then...
Your pitch.
Because I'm okay. That way, it actually works out better, because this is... Because then the backyard... See, this is the deal, is reversing it, though, is there's a door, because that was the side yard, so we called it. You're walking out of a kitchen, and no one wants to walk out of a kitchen into a garage. So that's a design issue. So if you're looking at this house and you look at the floor plan, so if that would be the question. Could I just reverse the whole thing? Because including the garage. The garage will go over, and then that would give us even more of a buffer. And then if anybody's going to make any noise, they're going to make noise back towards the rental.
And the two-story is up on top, facing
the other way.
Facing Pratt.
I like that compromise. Are you guys okay with that compromise?
Commissioner Pont, what a great idea.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to that at all. I just have to ask one quick question, though. Can whoever's doing the projector, can we bring up the actual top plan?
Roof plan?
Not the roof plan, the one that shows where, because you got...
Site plan?
We do have the fire turnaround that we have to make sure falls into place for safety.
Well, you got... Your driveway is like, your access is 20 feet, right?
Yeah.
Yes, but it's the turnaround that's
You have to have the hammerhead.
They want a turnaround.
Needed.
Yeah.
Is there a rule on the hammerhead being in the back of the driveway? There's none. So okay, so as long as they have it, so put it on the back.
Could that be accommodated with potentially? Oh, let's see. No, landscaping won't cut it because you're moving the house that far forward, right? How much farther forward are you moving the house?
Well, the idea is to flip it.
Yeah, just
entirely.
Yeah, but I mean, just in that location or other way around.
Oh well, no. So then that was the reason why I asked about the garage being, because the garage would be close, because we'd have to. So the garage would be 10 feet, but I can slide it more.
Right, but I think you're going to have to creep the house a little bit that way if you're moving the garage to the back.
But as long as we're referring to a little, because if you go too far, then you're basically sticking...
You're inside the setback again the other way.
Other way. And you have no room when you walk out of a back door.
Right.
You're slamming up against.
Right.
So that would be the question that I have to my neighbors, is moving the garage there you would see. Oh, and then that would be the other question: is the 8-foot fence? Is that something you're interested? Is that in play?
I need to measure my fence. My fence was built by whoever owned your lot originally.
Oh, what's your name? Okay. So, but the only question I have with that is what the setback needs to be between our properties. But as far as privacy and getting that single story all the way across then to the other side, and then I'm actually into that idea too, because then it almost lines up with if Donna Hines actually does build her 2 stories actually on that side also, which then lines our 2 up. I think it's a great idea.
And you can have proper windows.
I'll still leave the privacy windows. That idea was actually a great idea.
Yeah.
That's actually that was an easy idea.
I think so too. I think it's also privacy for the person in the, in the bedroom.
So the only question that I have then is are we okay? Because I know what the distance is. So that back the setback over here, because I was pushing away from them to stay away from them, was 10. I would feel comfortable with 12 if there was 12 feet between the fence and then the garage, and then we move everything else over. So it would be 2 feet. As you can tell, after 3 years of spending on this thing, I know the lot. So, and I know the spaces, and I know what would happen. But then, we'd end up with a single story across.
And I suspect your neighbors probably would prefer a 6-foot fence than an 8-foot. I hate to speak for them, but I suspect most in town is a 6-foot fence.
I'm good with I'm okay with the 6-foot fence. The 6-foot fence is there. So
just from the staff perspective, if the commission is interested in essentially approving the design but requiring it to be mirrored, staff can implement that direction as a condition. If you'd like to bring it, just essentially mirror the whole thing. Provide maybe some flexibility in the garage location based on the allowances of the zoning code and the condition, and you can make your motion, or staff can bring it back, but just to give the commission flexibility.
I'm wondering if we should have open public comment again to see if anyone in the public wants to respond.
The other thing I'm interested in is, would the public want to see it again?
Yeah.
Or would they trust this as a solution?
Let's find out. I mean, I don't know if public comment is open.
Your call.
Oh, wait a minute. I'll reopen public comment if you all would like to comment on it.
Well, I think we'd like to get it.
Wait till you get to the podium, please, so we can hear you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, we have to record you.
Yeah.
Hello. I think that it would be nice to revisit this again. My wife's out of town. She's pretty concerned about this thing. It would give her a chance. She's actually communicated a lot with Noah by way of email and visiting him, looking at the plans early on. And so we would like to, we could.
And let me ask, what do you think of the brainstorming
I think it's a better idea. I think so, because we won't be having this thing looking down at us, and we have a lot that is long. It's rectangular. Okay, our backyard is more wide than it is with width. There's 20 feet or whatever, and we like to entertain on the weekends, that kind of thing, when the weather's nice. So I think it'll help us having the garage to the back of this dwelling rather than the 2-story. Thank you.
So let's do a motion to continue with. Oh, is there additional? Sorry.
Yeah, I think you maybe want to say something too.
Yeah, I'd be in favor of what he's talking about, is moving it and putting the garage in the back, for his thing. And in my view too would come back a little bit. I mean, the joining flag lot, those plans are there, and the place is for sale. And to me, who's going to buy it for $1.2 million in the first place? And use somebody else's plans that already been designed the way they want it, and they're selling the place off. So I think when that new owner comes along to build, we really look at that one seriously and put that house up where he's talking about moving his, and then that still would leave the view open. Somewhat, enough, and I'll bend that much, but okay. I think it'll work a lot better that way.
If you want to close the public hearing, sorry.
Go ahead.
I'd like to go ahead and say let's do it the way we've discussed. Have it brought back so they can get a second look at it. just do the flip, move it around, however you need to move it around to make staff happy here.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, okay.
I want to ask
I know, that's not
applicant.
particularly formal, is it, David?
I want to find out from the applicant how long it's going to take him, so we can get him
Okay.
right back on the agenda.
I just have something. I actually really like the idea, by the way. Wait, reverse this. But the question I have then is how this goes down then. So I flip it and then I take it back to you, and then we do this again.
You don't like us.
I know I love you guys. It's just this has been a 3-year journey for me. So
Usually, in my experience, a mirror image is a real quick exam.
no, it is I can. So it's just I just want to get it. I just want to know timelines.
With the
'cause
protocol.
I've had FedEx problems.
The only thing different here may be, shifting it back and forth to do those setbacks the best way possible.
Well, and I think that's going to be, so I work with you on that, Lily, then, to come up with, because what my plan is, just so you guys know right at the bat, is I'm going to mirror it. I'm not switching it front or back, or what I call front and back, but I'm going to just, instead of having 10 feet between property lanes, I'm going to switch it to 12.
Okay.
Is what I'm going to do, and then that puts, I do really like this, then that puts backyard to backyard for me, which is actually...
And that's going to give you the proper turnaround for the
Yeah, everything
safety.
works, but then more
All right.
importantly is it helps with the noise, and I do respect the noise ordinance, and we really push hard to make sure that when people are using the front house that they're not, and I know they have to deal with it, and so I think that'll be great for noise for you guys too.
And how long do you think it'll take you to get some new plans?
I'm going to get them flopped, and I just have to ask my architect, but by next week they're going to be, because I really want to be on next week's.
Yeah, can we kind of make a
Wait a
motion
minute.
setting the date?
Yeah, it's important to set the date, otherwise we will have to charge the applicant another $600 public
He can do
hearing
it-
fee.
If he can get it back to you
By
guys
next meeting.
next week, can you get it in our next agenda?
We could put on the, I don't know that we can meet the next agenda because the staff report for that is due. I would recommend a continuance for 30 days, two meetings, just to ensure we can make it on the next agenda, obviously, because I can't guarantee, if we continue to 2 weeks and you don't make that, these folks have to show up to check, and then you have to pay the public hearing fee if you don't make it.
I want to make it, though.
Yeah.
I don't have, the city council is the only one who has the authority to waive the fees.
Can we be flexible on the time then?
Yeah.
Next possible meeting kind of thing?
Well, we have to continue to a date certain.
Yeah.
So here's what I would recommend: continue to the next meeting, and if we're not able to meet that, then at that time you continue it to the next one at another date certain. Then the public
can't-
knows what's happening.
If we can't meet that deadline, though,
Yes.
can we notify the neighbors so they don't have to show up here?
That's what I'm trying to make sure of. So make sure Lily has your contact information. Mike, you guys can get a hold of us.
Or they can call in.
We can give, or you guys are more than welcome to give it to me, and I'll follow up too, because
Oh, that sounds good.
I have no problem
Put a
doing that.
flag on his flag lot.
I mean, if we're going to accommodate the neighbors, I think we also have to accommodate the applicant.
Yes. Yes.
So,
Thank
But if you reach out to us, we can keep you posted or work with the neighbor.
Well, yeah.
And I'll get on this immediately, and
Okay.
we'll get it taken care of. And I got to say again,
thank you for being so cooperative
it
here.
really
Both
is a
sides.
big deal for us to have the house there. So,
All right.
so appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This is really kumbaya.
So do we need to do a
all that
continuance?
stuff so moved?
So
That.
Continue. The item is. You need a motion to continue to a date certain the next meeting.
That's
this
correct.
is
So moved.
I move.
Oh, you're going to do it.
So move.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Knudsen?
Approved. Yes.
Commissioner Monette?
Yes.
Commissioner Pont?
Yes.
Chair Kistner?
Yes. Okay.
And I would just say that next meeting is going to be September 5th, and the benefit is we have a 5 Tuesday month in August, which gives us an extra week, which means I think we could probably make that agenda.
Yeah, see, we get break now and then, right? All right. Let's let them go. You have nothing else scheduled. Department report, would you like to do that, Mr. House?
I would. I actually have a fair amount to report today. So just so the commission's aware, there's a fair amount to report on the department report today. First of all, we have hired, as you all know, our building official, Philip Henry. He started 2 weeks ago Monday. It's been great having him in the department, and I heard he was able to secure a place in town. So we will have another city staffer living in town, someone who interacts with the community quite a bit, and I believe he has school-age children. So yeah, we really are very much appreciative of that. And so anyway, 2 weeks in town, but we're really happy to have him. 2 L's. Put me on the spot. And so also, as you noticed, City Attorney Brown was not here last meeting or this meeting in response to the City Council direction to cut the City Attorney's budget by 40%. Staff is making every effort to reduce the use of the City Attorney. What that does is that puts higher expectations on staff, on the commissioners, to meet the Brown Act requirements, to meet the requirements of the bylaws, et cetera. So I'm just going to ask that the commissioners be very cognizant of those types of issues. I've asked staff to just try to help me to pay attention, and we'll try to help you to keep everyone kind of in compliance with the law, obviously. And if there are specific items that we feel we need to have the city attorney here, we will have him here, so it's not like he will not be here. But the default is he will not be attending unless requested specifically by staff or the planning commission. So just be aware of that. In kind of keeping with some of the comments made by Commissioner Pont, staff does in order to allow all commissioners to have access to the same information, we are asking that commissioners funnel all their comments or questions, prior to the meeting directly to staff, and I'm asking that they come through me. It's my job to make sure that you all have access to the same information, and so I would appreciate if they're in writing. However, prior to writing your questions, I don't mind a phone call to kind of hash things out, and it maybe would result in no need for a communication to the entire commission, but occasionally it does because new information is brought up or a commissioner asks staff to do some research, and then we will provide that to the whole commission. So just be aware of that. Please provide your questions to me. Either phone call or email is fine. And please allow 1 day, 24-hour response time. So just sometimes we have some priorities we're trying to focus on. We're not able to answer our calls or do the research to answer questions right that day. Staff is interested in potentially canceling the November 21st meeting. That's a question to the commission. We don't have to do that now. That's the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. A lot of people are out of town. Staff thinks it would be a good idea. However, there are a fair amount of meaty items coming before the commission through the holiday season. We have a fair amount of regular or large-scale applications for what St. Helena is used to. So just be aware of that. But I would say right now, I would ask the commission to look at your schedules, look at your calendars, and take some consideration of that. I do intend to hold meetings on December 5th and December 19th. So those are not during the weeks of the holidays, so that's just something to pay attention to. But happy to take input from the commission, obviously. And then similarly, it has been the tradition of this commission to cancel the first meeting in January, so that would be January 2nd. So I think that's a good idea, but just if you have concerns, you can email me, we can work on it. But consider canceling the 21st, November 21st, and January 2nd meeting. And frankly, I'm sorry to already be talking about 2018, but I am a planner. And then just a reminder that we will be having a joint meeting with the Planning Commission and the City Council at their next meeting, so that's the 22nd.
Next Tuesday.
That's next Tuesday, a week from tonight. Joint meeting with the City Council and the Planning Commission next Tuesday. We're still working out the logistics of seating, but I will imagine the dais will be full of commission and council. You guys will have to share microphones. I'm imagining we'll seat the chair and the mayor together, seat the vice chair and the vice mayor together, and then you all can choose where you'd like to sit other than that. And the topics...
Is that going to be land use?
Yeah,
That's going to be an education thing.
The topic, well, there's going to be some items. So the topics for that will be the Land Use 101 kind of training that we do every year when we have new commissioners. A general plan EIR update. I want to give that to both the council and the commission and the public all at the same time. And then also a discussion and review of the Planning Commission priority list, hopefully to get concurrence from the council. However, obviously we're all free to and interested in hearing their direction on that priority list. So it's a lot, I know, I'm sorry, but we're trying to get some things moving, so, yeah.
All right, have you got an agenda forecast?
It is in the packet. I don't have any specific projects to talk about. It has not been updated since the last one, but I would encourage you to look at some of the projects there. CIA is back in for a project to just implement the expansion of their educational facilities, no expansion to the dormitory. Obviously, the entire CEQA analysis is being redone as a part of that, so I don't know that that'll come during the holidays, but that is a large project that's in. It should be updated, but if it's not, I will take a double look this week and make sure it's in the agenda. But there's also, we have a custom crush facility that's proposed on Dowdell. It's an industrial project, an industrial area, but it is not small. That's on the list. I anticipate that coming in the coming months. And obviously, we're reviewing the Ted Hall Hotel project out in Mills Lane. So there's some substantial projects that staff does anticipate coming to the commission in the coming months. So just be aware of that, and we'll be working with you to get them decided.
Okay. With that, meeting adjourned. Thank you.